ruined it. I was going to say put your hands together, but we can do that again many times. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and I think I can see girls and boys in the audience. I'm Anushka Astana. I'm an associate editor at The Guardian and presenter of our Today in Focus podcast. I think we can all expect a pretty inspiring evening tonight. Malala Yousafzai was fighting for the rights of tens of millions of girls who have been denied access to education when she was just 11 years old. She used a blog to tell the world about ordinary lives in Swat in Pakistan. You spoke out when others didn't dare to about being displaced. After she was shot in 2012 and came here, she carried on campaigning. She founded Malala Fund, won a Nobel Peace Prize.
Just a small thing.
I think the important one here, I think at some point became Social Secretary of your college at Oxford, although no longer.
I had to resign, I had too much work to do. For working on a book, and you have so much to do, you have to resign.
Well, as you were saying, she's also written I Am Malala, and now this, We Are Displaced. How on earth do you get to do all this?
Well, I know it's a lot of work. I am currently studying in university, so I had to find time to focus on this book. I try my best to, do my essays on time. All my university friends are here, so it's a bit, it's making me really nervous because they know what happens in university, but we have made a promise that we'll never share that. What happens there stays there.
Okay, no questions about Oxford.
We have a confidentiality agreement, and I hope they keep that. I do meet the deadlines, and thankfully I'm still in Oxford, so it's going well. Yeah, it's going well.
Just as we were coming on, Malala was telling me about her essay crises, which takes me back a few years. Mm-hmm. Quite a lot of years, actually. But we won't talk about that. Now, we are here, we're going to talk about this book, We Are Displaced, and it is an incredibly inspiring book. It's Malala's story and the story of many, many other girls who have been displaced. Stories of, so many of them struck me. A girl who had to flee violence in the Congo, living in a forest, and finally got to Zambia and had to watch her mother murdered because of anti-refugee hatred. Stories from Syria, from Iraq, from people trying to get into the US across the southern border. Why did you decide to write this book?
I decided to write this book because personally I have met many refugees and displaced girls around the world. I have been to Kenya, Rwanda, the Syrian refugee region. I have been to Brazil and Mexico and met displaced girls there. And I would hear these girls' stories from them, and there were stories of courage, there were stories of bravery, but when I would watch the news and hear politicians, they would often talk about refugees in terms of just numbers and figures. So for me, I think it was that, we often hear about immigrants and refugees, but we never hear from them. And I wanted people and everyone to hear from refugees, especially young girls and women. And that is why I decided to write this book, and this includes inspiring stories from these young girls, which would tell us that they are not just victims, but they are also, triumphants who are overcoming all these situations and still continuing to have hope for their future.
And is there any one story that really sticks in your mind?
Oh, it's very hard because I find all of these stories so inspiring, and one story that I still remember is that of Zainab. I remember it was like 3 or 4 years ago that I was in the US and I went to Massachusetts, and we were in this room with a group of girls, and everybody was telling me their stories, and most of the girls were refugee girls. And this one girl was telling me about her academic achievements, and then I asked her about, where is she from, and how did her family become refugees and everything. And then she started sharing her story. So Zainab, she was from Yemen, her sister, and she became refugees, they had to go to Egypt, and then because of the conflicts and the situation that they were facing there, they had to again apply for visa to the US. And the difficult point was when Zainab got accepted in the US, but Sabrine, her sister, did not get accepted. And just that difficulty when you leave one of your family members behind. And then the journey of Sabrine is also inspiring because she decides to just jump into a boat, go onto these buses with strangers, that people that she does not know, puts her life at risk, and she tries to find a safe place for herself. But now Sabrine is in Belgium. Zainab is in the US. She's studying. She's in university, and but the two sisters have not met since then. And it's something that we cannot imagine for a second, when how family members get separated and get apart in these difficult journeys that they take, and it requires a lot of courage to do so.
And I noticed Zainab, the story you're telling, she actually set up a female refugee football team, didn't she?
Yeah, so she's performing really well in her academics, getting 4.0, which is the American system of scoring.
Is that good? Very good.
It's very good. And I'm not sure if I can get that, but yeah, it's very good, and she's excellent. And she also then started this soccer team for refugee girls in her school, and she brought them together. And she's very vocal. She has spoken at different platforms. She's also working now together with the Malala Fund and raising the voices of refugee girls.
And do you ever feel, I mean, this story is so heartbreaking because these two sisters who were separated had also been deserted by their parents at the age of 4. Do you ever feel in a situation like that, you're talking to Zainab, you know her sister's in Belgium, you know they can't meet. Do you ever think, can I intervene? Is there something I can do in this situation?
Well, we have offered support and help, and it's more complicated. So, but we are trying our best to help them in every way we can. But our focus is mainly on these girls' education and their future dreams. So, the stories of the girls that we have included in the book, the proceeds from this book will go to the work that we are doing for refugee girls, focusing on their education, but also will go to the girls who have shared their stories to help them in their future goals.
And why have you called it We Are Displaced and not We Are Refugees?
That's a very interesting question. Because when you look at the number of people who are displaced, that counts up to 68.5 million. So there are currently 68.5 million people who are either internally displaced within their countries, or they have become refugees. That means they had to move from their own country into another country or countries because of wars, conflicts, or other natural disasters. But the number of refugees is around 24 million. The rest are internally displaced. And that's why I have included the stories of Najla, the story of Maria from Colombia, and Najla is from Iraq, how they have moved within their country, so they are internally displaced, but not outside of their country. So displacement has been a big issue, and it's an issue that is global, that is happening in the Middle East, that is happening in many parts in Africa, that is happening in Latin America, and not all of these people are becoming refugees. That means they're not moving to other countries, but they are becoming internally displaced in their own countries. But also, displacement, you may not be entitled kind of as a refugee, but you still may feel that you have left your home because in a situation where this was not your first option. And in that sense, like for me, coming to the UK was just because of the circumstances. I remember it was my last day of school. I was in my school bus. We were talking about the next day's exam. And then, something happens, and a week passes by, and I'm in induced coma, and then I wake up in a completely different country called the UK, and in a city called Birmingham. And then I hear these people speaking in English, and I realize that this is not the same country anymore. I'm somewhere else. And then just adjusting and getting used to the new culture, this new system. It was, in the beginning, it's quite difficult. So in that sense, I would not be called as a refugee, and I'm not a refugee, but we still feel displaced in that sense.
And that's so interesting, this idea that you suddenly open your eyes, you're in a different country. And you were in a country where not only do girls get education. They have to get education. You have to go to school. Do you think people realise how lucky they are to have that as you go around the world and see these stories and have your own story?
I think definitely, having access to schools, to amazing teachers. Two of my teachers are here, and to have amazing teachers, and things like computer labs and science labs and PowerPoint and like all these equipments, like the things that you would take for granted. I remember like in Pakistan in the school like where I was, we thought this was the most like amazing school there, but that did not have like those facilities for us. Like the main things that we needed were like a teacher, books, and some notebook to write on. And for us, like that was like most precious thing that we could ever get. And I remember that when we would go to school every morning, the girls would be just so happy in the school that they would find a sense of freedom there, a sense of liberty there that they could not find elsewhere in the streets or elsewhere in their homes. And so, when girls were into school, they would be also feeling like they are just fighting against the society that does not allow them to have equal rights or does not accept them as equal, does not allow them to have jobs or future opportunities. So for me, like their school was an amazing time, and we would try to stay in school and not go early. So like when the school bus would come, it would have like 2 trips, and I would say, no, we want to go in the last one because we want to spend more time here. So for us, it was one of the best times.
It must have been quite different at the school in Birmingham. Did you get a different attitude?
No,
Remember,
okay,
your teachers are just there. They're just there.
Birmingham, okay, I can't look there, but yeah, Birmingham is an amazing place. It's a beautiful city, and I'm really proud.
That's not the way lots of people would describe it. No offence to anyone from Birmingham.
Well, I'm proud of it. Yeah, it's a very nice place, very welcoming and quite diverse, and it has a very good hospital, Queen Elizabeth Hospital, a very nice library. What else? I don't think much is left, but yeah, a few things we have. But in the beginning, to be honest, I did find it hard in the new school because. And I think it's for everyone, even if you are a refugee or if you are an immigrant or if you are from a different place. In the beginning, you find it difficult to have a conversation with your friends, and you feel that the jokes that you would have in Pakistan, that would not make them laugh here, or the jokes that they're having here would not make you laugh.
Do you think English people are not very funny? You can be honest.
They are in their own way, like
they are in their own mind.
Kind of like, yeah. It just depends. I am a big fan of like British comedy, so I would not want to offend that. But so yeah, so I used to be, like just being in a classroom, just trying to figure out if you want to talk to your friends or not, or join their conversation. But then I was lucky that I got a few amazing friends who were always there, to talk and force me to talk to them and play with them or go to lunch or something with them, and also great teachers who encouraged me to do that. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.
So can you moved.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a clap for you and your teachers. So you talked about being internally displaced, and there's a story in the book from Colombia that you mentioned. And one of the things that struck me was that even within her own country, there were barriers that she came across because she looked different, she sounded different. Can you just tell us a bit about that story?
Yeah, so I met Maria in Mexico actually, and so she got displaced in Colombia, and now she is in a, like, she's in the same country, but the location where she's based in, she does not feel like she belongs to that place. And she's still struggling, and she, but she's also doing her activism at the same time, like writing songs or like doing documentaries, and she's very enthusiastic. And when we met her, she did an amazing dance, and like we were spending time with her and listening to her story. So you hear these stories of that breaks your heart, but also at the same time, when you see hope in the eyes of these girls, that gives you hope that that these girls are courageous and they are overcoming these barriers.
And can I ask you, we talk a lot here about fear and resistance to refugees in the UK, and I think often I felt that that's quite a Western sentiment. And I was really shocked by Marie Claire's story that I mentioned when we first came in. This was a girl who was in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She and her family had to flee. They were living in forests. They finally made it to Zambia, and an anti-refugee hate mob came to her house and stabbed her mother to death out in front of her, and also attempted to murder her father. Why do you think there is such hostility towards refugees?
Well, I wish I could have an answer because for me personally, the world needs compassion and the world needs kindness, and that's something that seems to be missing in many places. Refugees and immigrants or people who are displaced are facing difficulties all over the world, and I think it's sometimes the differences that we take as a threat. There may be cultural differences, there may be religious differences, there may be color differences that we take as a threat rather than as something that we should welcome, we should celebrate in a form of diversity. That is something that brings more colors, to the society that we are living in. So I think for that, it needs more, awareness raising, and also reminding people of how these people can contribute to your countries, and also bringing that human side that we should all be treating each other with kindness and giving each other support.
And is tackling that sentiment something that Malala Fund is focusing on?
So the work that Malala Fund does is focused mainly on girls' education, and my focus is secondary education, because there's huge finance towards primary education and also tertiary education. But when it comes to the secondary education, there's a huge gap for that. Not enough countries are investing in the secondary education. And it's so hard for girls to continue their schooling, because as soon as they reach the age of 11 or 12, that's when they drop out the most. So that's my focus, is to ensure that girls can continue through their secondary education, and they can have safe and quality 12 years of education. And as my father and I were local activists speaking out for girls' education and women empowerment in Swat Valley, I believe that there are activists all around the world who are trying to bring change in their communities. And just taking that vision, we are now supporting education activists and local leaders in different countries, from Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Nigeria, the Syrian refugee region, and also Brazil. And we are supporting them by financing them, or giving them training, or giving them other support or recognition that they need in their work for education.
And so where a person ends up in a safe home, like yourself, in Birmingham, which is beautiful. I feel like I shouldn't have said that, of course, if you like roundabouts. No, I'm joking. Or Farah, who is the CEO of Malala Fund. I'm sure you feel really lucky. But do you think people understand that even when you're safe, you're fed, you've got education, you've got the interactive whiteboards, whatever you've got, do you think people understand what it means to leave your home and not be able to return?
I think this is a place where an understanding is missing, because oftentimes when refugees move to a different country, we feel that now they should be grateful because they've got everything now. But we also forget the human side of that difficulty and that pain that you have to go through when you leave your home. We had not gone to Pakistan for 5.5 years. And in 2018, we went to Pakistan for the first time after the attack. And, my father used to dream about Pakistan every night because he felt that there was something missing in our life. And I always felt this sense of incompletion, that, there's something that I need to do, there's something that I need to see. And that dream came true when I went back to Pakistan in March 2018. And we went to Swat Valley. I saw all of my friends and family, and it was more than 500, definitely.
How
and
did
we
it
took
feel?
A lot of selfies, and they were giving
How
me
many?
prayers. More than 500, 100%. 100%. We have big families, my uncle has 8 kids. So, and then
Did they have a
his
selfie
kids
each,
have kids.
and then a group selfie?
Yeah, and like everybody has like is married and then they have kids, so it's like just multiplied. It's like exponential growth that we are seeing in the family. Yeah, so we had to meet a lot of people, and then we also went to Swat. We went to our house where we were living in, and the family who's living there has kept my room safe. So I was able to go to my room, see my school trophies. I was very proud of them. See my notebooks, my books, my bed, my cupboard, my drawing. Everything was there, and we were just so happy, and we cried a lot there as well. But we felt so happy. Like I can't describe that happiness in words, but we felt very happy.
And was that something that you had not dreamt that you would be able to do again?
For me, it just became kind of like impossible, because every time we would try to go back to Pakistan, like something would be happening. There's like political things happening, and like there are elections or there is a protest going on, and like my dad would say, okay, Malala, let's wait for the right time. And I said, Dad, the right time will never come. Like if you're waiting for the perfect time in terms of politics, like that is never possible in any country.
What did you think the right time might be, or what did your dad think?
I don't know, maybe like, nothing is happening in politics, every leader is happy, no opposition, that's kind of impossible in this world. So I said, we have to go. And we made that decision. I said, even if you don't want to come with me, fine, I'll get my own ticket and I'll go on my own. Then, parents won't let me go on my own, so then they joined me, and we were able to go to Pakistan.
And can I just ask, as we're talking about Pakistan at the moment, I mean, one of the stories we've covered recently is the story of Asia Bibi, which I know you mentioned in your first book. I mean, you were there to go home and to see your home, but do you feel frustrated that things haven't changed perhaps as much as you might hope?
I think in terms of like Asia Bibi's case, I think she needs justice, and what has happened to her has been completely unfair. And I think, but in Pakistan, like things are changing, and we do see a positive change already in terms of the politics and like the narrative. And I hope that the promises that the current leaders have made of a better future for Pakistan. And so I hope that they fulfill those promises. It's a new government now. It hasn't been that many months, but I hope that they do, fulfill the promises that they made a few months ago.
And you were talking about how you were waiting for a quiet time in politics. I was previously political editor at The Guardian. Began in the beginning of 2016, and I'll be honest, it's not been a quiet time since
Never
then.
Yes.
Still not a quiet time now. And yesterday we were actually talking about US politics on the podcast, and we were talking about Donald Trump, and he went to the Mexico border to demand his wall. And I have to say, when we were doing that story, I thought about your book, because I thought about the story of Annalisa. And here's a girl who had come from Guatemala, and she was traveling to the US. And she just had this terrifying journey. She got stuck in a village for a month. She was on her own. She had to cross a river by a raft. There were men with guns. There were crocodiles. She had to run for 2 hours. There were elderly people running with her who could almost not keep up. And when she got to the US border, she was put in what she described, and I think a lot of people describe it as this, as the icebox, which is a very cold and very unpleasant room that they keep people in. And then she talked about the dog cage, where it was basically a warehouse and she was held away from people by chain link fences. When you hear Donald Trump talk about illegal immigrants at the border or talk about an emergency at the border, would you like to tell him about people like Annalisa?
Well, people do not know enough about girls like Annalisa who are taking these dangerous journeys, putting their lives at risk, but also that the fact that they have no other option but to do that. I hope that leaders like Trump will read the book, will read these stories and get inspired. But I've heard he does not like reading books.
Have you?
Just rumors. It's just a rumor. It's just a rumor. But who knows? I can narrate it through the TV channels that he watches in the morning.
You could go on
Fox. I can tweet it. I think he watches the ones that he doesn't like.
Oh.
So I can put it on that. The channels that he doesn't like.
If you tweet him, he might reply.
Yeah, well,
We could send. Have you sent him a copy? Has your agent sent him a copy of this book?
well,
I'll keep one for Donald
I would
Trump.
love
You
to.
can sign it.
I'd love to sign it.
And do you think? But there is this kind of really serious point, which is they are trying to describe this essentially as illegal immigrants crossing the border. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've been and talked to girls like Annalisa. What is happening when people are fleeing parts of Southern America? I mean, there's a few stories from Southern America in your book.
Yeah, I included stories from Latin America because when we talk about refugees, often we think about Syria or maybe Rohingya right now. But this is a global issue. This is happening in many parts of the world, across continents. And that's why I focused on Latin America so people know more about the stories from that part as well. And, you know, when you hear Annalisa's story that she becomes an orphan at the age of 15 and that she has no other way to live in that country and in that place, and she is in a situation where for her own safety and for her own life, she has to decide to leave her home. And then she decides to see her half-brother in the US, who she has not seen before. And that journey which you described is just terrifying and scary and something that, you know, we as 15-year-olds would never dare to take. You know, we can't, sometimes like when we are 15, we can't even go from like Birmingham to London on our own. But these are young girls who are taking these brave steps. But I think it's important that we look at it from a human perspective and also think about the countries and what is happening in those countries, the wars and conflicts that are happening there. And just building walls is just never a solution, either to the refugee issue or to bringing peace.
So you feel quite frustrated by what's going on in the US?
Well, to be honest, I think just seeing slightly negative response towards refugees and displaced people is frustrating for everyone, mostly for the refugees themselves because they are the victims and they are the ones who have to confront this. So when I think about the story of Zainab or Annalisa or Mary Claire and like the difficulties that they have gone through, and then when they face such kind of criticism or such kind of hatred or such kind of hostility, you feel like, you know, this is not how these girls should be welcomed. These girls should be welcomed with love, with an open heart, with a bit of kindness, rather than such, hostility.
And you talk in this book about being internally displaced in Pakistan before you came here. Was that terrifying to leave your home in that way, to suddenly realise you had to go?
Yeah, so, terrorism in Swat Valley started in 2007, and we had been living in that for almost 2 years. But then a point came in May 2009 that the military and the civil administration announced that the people of Swat had to leave their houses and leave their homes, for the military operation that they were conducting to be successful. And it was a difficult choice. My dad said that, no, it's just the news and nothing is going to happen. We will stay in our houses. We're not going to leave Swat. But my mom was saying this man just never understands anything. And look at we were hearing firing and one of our close relatives got shot in that firing and was killed. And there were, we could hear bomb blasts and there were helicopters around and there were people were just leaving their houses. And I remember that whole journey. Just seeing and looking at those, that mob of people on the roads. Some people with just a bag of clothes. Some people with no shoes. Some people with holding their children's hands or and just walking on those roads. Some people were lucky to have access to cars, and some people were just walking through the mountains for days and days. And it was just something that I cannot imagine now, but it was a very difficult time. And I remember, the Taliban were on the road, and they were acting as traffic Taliban, just like the traffic police, because they had their own, like a police station, they had their Taliban station, then they had a traffic Taliban, and they were telling people to keep their cars in the queue and holding their big guns, and just that moment when you feel like, this was the paradise that you were living in for whenever you were born. And this was the beautiful valley that you were grateful for each and every day. And there was peace before. You know, when we talk about the conflict zones, we feel like there has always been conflict, but that is not the case. In many places, it's been started like a few decades ago or a few years ago. Like the same is with Syria, like in other parts as well. Like these things just start all of a sudden, and you never know, and then you become a refugee or a displaced person. We used to have in Pakistan is hosting millions of refugees from Afghanistan because of the Soviet-Afghan war and all that situation. We had seen refugees before, and we knew what a refugee life would be like. But we also were aware that you could be a refugee for a long time, just as it was the case with the Afghan refugees who had been refugees for, now it's been 3 decades, more than that. So we were really scared of that we don't want to be refugees or displaced forever. And that's why my dad and I and other activists from Swat Valley, when we became displaced, we started this activism that we want peace in our Swat Valley and we want to go back homes. And then it was possible after 3 months, peace was restored and we were able to go back.
Although the story that really got me was the chickens.
Yeah.
Your brothers.
So we had 2 little chicks, and when we were leaving Swat, we had to leave those chicks. We also had to leave my school bag. I was just so disappointed. My mom said, we can't take everything, just take the necessary things. And I remember, picking up the wrong trousers and the wrong, it was just all a mismatch, and just picking up the wrong shoes, and then when I opened, it was just nothing was working. But also, my brother really insisted, the little one, that we take the chicks because he was disappointed, they're going to be on their own and we have to take them. And my mom said that, no, we can't, because they would need some space for their waste, and they would need a washroom.
Washroom?
Kind of a washroom, just to make my brother understand. But then my mom said, we cannot take them. And my brother said, but they can wear diapers. So, yeah, he's a bit old now. He's 15 now, but he was very cute then. He's still a bit cute now. But yeah, when we came back, the chicks, they were really tied together. Their bones was really interconnected. So you could feel the more and it was just the bones and a bit of feathers left, and you could feel all they had left was each other, and they wanted to die together. So it was very difficult to see that. It made me cry then as well.
Oh. And when you've written about your childhood, you talked about boys having different treatment to girls. So, for example, boys would get the cream or the eggs or the best cuts of meat or play freely on the roofs, and you wondered how free a daughter could ever be. You seem to be very aware of gender divisions from an early age. Do you remember becoming aware of that?
Oh, I think definitely, it's visible. The gender discrimination in many societies is so visible that you can see it with your own eyes. And I could see that. The fact that there were so many girls in many families that were not allowed to go to schools, but the boys were. There were so many girls who were told to stay inside the house and not do a job, but the boys were allowed to do so. And there were so many girls who were told to stay inside and do not walk to the markets. And on the other hand, the boys were, and the boys can just walk freely on the roads. So it was visible, but even with my own aunts, my dad's 5 sisters, they could not get their education. And what is the life of the girl who does not get an education is getting married at an early age, usually 14, 15, and then becoming a mother when she herself is a child. And when this happened to my own friend, she was 11 years old when she just suddenly disappeared from the school. And by the time she was 14, she called me on phone, and I was surprised, where are you and everything. And she said she's married and she has a kid now. We were the same age. And at the age of 14, she had a son, and it was just shocking. But I think even when it comes to the refugee issues, it's girls and women who are the most vulnerable because they are victims and they become vulnerable to sexual harassment, sexual violence, trafficking. They become victims to the fact that there is less investment in their education and in their future. For instance, in Lebanon, 41% of the Syrian refugee girls get married before the age of 18. So that is the situation when it comes to that gender discrimination within refugees as well.
And was that something this book covers all over the world? Is that something that you've come across in every part of the world that you've been to?
I think definitely. I think gender discrimination is a global issue. It is present even in the so-called kind of Western democracies, which when I was in Pakistan, I thought everything was perfect here, but there's still a lot that needs to be done, from ensuring that women can get equal opportunities as men, especially in the higher positions, to equal pay and safety in their workplace against any kind of harassment, whether that's sexual harassment or any other form of harassment. So I was very surprised with that, but also but this is happening in refugee camps. This is happening everywhere, maybe in different forms, but that needs to be addressed.
So you've seen sexism in this country as much as you've seen in all parts of the world.
But I would say in different forms, in different ways. Maybe it's slightly invisible. I would not say completely invisible, but slightly less visible compared to other areas. Like for instance, like girls here can go to school. Women are not often told to stay inside the house, and that is also but we are seeing a positive change, whether that is in the UK or in the US or in Pakistan or in India. The activism that is going on, the global movement that has started in every part of the world, that is just changing societies, changing mindsets, pushing political leaders to change their policies, to bring that structural change that is needed, to bring that ideological change that is needed. So there is hope that things will change, as we have already seen a positive change in the past.
You've been very inspired by your father, and clearly you've kind of dedicated your life now, as well as to your study, to girls' education. I mean, do you think he's a feminist?
Well, I say that my father was a feminist before he knew the word feminist. Because, and some people only talk about feminism, but there are people who actually take action and show and reflect feminism through their acts. And my father was so happy that I was born and I was, a girl. And so we had a stillborn girl before in our family, and then I was the second daughter in the family. So some of our friends and relatives came to congratulate my mom, but some came to tell my mom, don't worry, because next time you'll have a son. And it's just the fact that, not many people celebrated my birth because I was a girl. Even my granddad did not do any celebrations. But in all that, my dad was just so proud to have a daughter, and he had already decided that if he would have a daughter, he will name her after the Malala Yousafzai, who is this Afghan heroine who, raised her voice at the Second Anglo-Afghan War, but also she's known by her own name. Because in our culture, usually you would not say women's name out loud. And women would, call themselves as somebody's wife or somebody's, sister or cousin. But
that happens here too.
I
get letters that are Mrs. Toby Jones.
Yeah, and so I think that was my father said, I want my daughter to be known by her own name, and so people, but also, people already, I've told this story many times, but yeah, he wrote my name on the family tree, where my dad's cousin brought this family tree where it was full of men's names. Women did exist in our family, just their names were not written on that. And so my dad wrote down my name, and the cousin was quietly surprised and laughing and this man is crazy. But my dad said your mind will change one day. And now that person is also supporting us. So and also the fact that I was able to speak out during that time was because my father allowed me to speak out. There were so many other girls who wanted to speak out, to raise their voice, but they were not able to do so because their father stopped them, their brothers stopped them. But my father believed in women's rights, equality, and empowerment, and he allowed me to speak.
Um, I'm going to start bringing in, we have questions that have been submitted by the audience, but before I do that, I just want to ask a few more questions. When you were speaking out at that time, you must have been terrified. Was there ever a point where you thought, actually, I'm too scared to do this?
I think I used to get more scared by the fact that if nobody speaks out, what will happen to us? If nobody speaks out, and if this terrorism continues, what would life be like? And to be honest, all we wanted was our Swat Valley back. We wanted that Swat Valley that we grew up in, which was known to be like the Switzerland of the East. The Queen Elizabeth, the queen of this country, she called it the Switzerland of the East. We are told so, and she also went there. But we think it's better than Switzerland anyway.
Switzerland can be the Swat Valley of the West?
Exactly, that's a better description. But yeah, and so for us it was just getting our home again as it was before. And what I have noticed is like when the stories that I have mentioned and the girls I meet, all of them just want to go back to their home. They have this dream that they want to see their land again. They want to see their friends and family again. So for us, Swat is very dear and very close to our heart.
And you mentioned a girl called Mazoon in the book.
Yes.
Who went from Syria to the camps in Jordan. And I just like this, that they called her the Malala of where she was. Just tell us about some of the positive stories and the inspiring stories you saw from the girls.
Yeah, so this was my first trip to a refugee camp. It was in Jordan, in Zatari camp, and it was my first experience of seeing refugees or IDPs outside Pakistan. And I went to this refugee camp, and I was thinking that everything, that the people here would be really miserable and really hopeless. But then I met this amazing young girl, Mazoon, and she was just so hopeful and positive and optimistic that I said like, wow, like, where is this energy coming from in this amazing young girl? And it was like the same with all children. They were trying to like play games in that refugee camp. They were trying to laugh. They were trying to play hide and seek and run around. And you feel like the children are trying their best to have that life that every child deserves. No matter you are a refugee and you have been forced out of your houses, that they're trying to have a normal life as any child would wish for. And Mazoon was taking me around the refugee camp. She was telling me the stories, and in the beginning we could not talk fluently in English. She was only speaking in Arabic, and but we still felt like there was a connection between us. And then I met her again. But then she had moved to a different refugee camp in Jordan, which is called the Azraq refugee camp. And this time it was a newly established refugee camp, so it was a bit more quiet, and it was that energy was not there as it was in the Zatari refugee camp. So then we decided to meet some girls in that refugee camp, and I was sitting with these young, amazing girls, and one girl says that, Malala, you are amazing and you inspire me, but the person who has actually changed my life is Mazoon. Because there was a point where I decided to give up on my education, and my parents were telling me that it is not important for you. You should get married, and that I was about to give up to that. But when Mazoon came in, when she talked to me, that education is important for you, that it can give you a future, that changed my life. And just hearing that from that young girl was just so inspiring, because these young girls in these refugee camps, they're activists. They're passionate for their education. They have dreams for their future. Mazoon wants to become a journalist. Mazoon is now in the UK. She is in Newcastle, and so she's here as a refugee now, and she is also the UN Goodwill Ambassador. So she is advocating globally. And like, people should not call her like the Malala of Syria, I think, because she is the Mazoon of Syria.
Oh, that's quite nice. Does Britain feel like home now?
Yes, in some ways. But like the welcome that we have received, the support that we have received in this country, yes, it does feel like home. But the weather, no. The traffic rules, no, because we never have these traffic rules there.
You don't like traffic rules?
I was so surprised. I said, like, I'm not hearing any horn. Like, nobody's pushing the horn and like nobody's shouting at each other. And like, you might find, oh, like Birmingham is terrible and stuff like that. And like in terms of traffic stuff, for me, like, no, this is like the best one. Like, I have never seen, people following traffic rules. Like, that has never, there are no traffic rules. Yeah. So in that sense, no, it doesn't feel like home.
My cousin visited once years ago from India, and I flashed a light in a car to let someone come. And he told me that in India, if you flash the light, it means you're going. And I was thinking, I'm not sure that works.
We have just the new rules that we have developed.
What do you love? What do you love most about the UK?
Okay. People might think there isn't much. There are many things in the UK that I like. I'm proud of Birmingham, and I was really happy that I was able to receive treatment in the QE hospital. The doctors, the nurses, everybody was so supportive, and they helped me in my whole recovery process. But also the school and now college, the Oxford University. So grateful to be in that.
Is it fun?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Are you? Is this the moment where it's what goes on at Oxford stays at Oxford?
Yeah, friends are supposed to be faithful and good friends. So I hope they stay good.
Why did you stop being social secretary? Just too much else on?
Too much work, writing books, campaigning. So I said I may not be able to actually do it. Yeah.
Do you try and change people's minds at university? Do you find yourself being an activist wherever you are?
To be honest, I think in university, people who get in there are very smart and intelligent and clever, and just to be in that group of friends is always great. And all of them are aware of the issues that are out there, and we get to hear from amazing speakers around the world. We have incredible professors who are doing research and like are giving talks, and so for me, I'm not worried about the future generation and in terms of their understanding of the issues and the barriers that are out there. But the more we learn, the better. And in Oxford, everybody is engaged in different things and trying and working for bringing in more diversity or ensuring that the underrepresented groups get equal opportunities as others, or raising awareness regarding feminism or equality. So just seeing all these things shows you that the young people are engaged in many ways.
And last question before I bring in some of these audience questions. What's it like to get a Nobel Peace Prize?
Nice. I remember I was in school when it was announced. My dad was like at home and like he was turning on he was watching it on the internet because they announce it live, and they call the winner like half an hour before, so the winner knows before everyone else. But I did not have a phone then, and
because you were too young.
I was 17. No, yeah, I was 17, but but I said, I'm going to stay away from phone, focus on my education. And then, so I went to school. I said, I'm not winning this. There's no way I can win the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm going to go to my school. And then I was in my chemistry lesson that my deputy head teacher came into the classroom, and she deals with oftentimes you are in trouble when she comes. So I was a bit worried. I was quite scared of all of my teachers in school, and
apart from these ones.
Well, and then I was, and then I went outside, and the teacher told me that, Malala, you have won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I said, thank you. I had no idea what was happening. I had just no idea. But I did decide. So I gave a short speech in school, and then I decided to stay in school and went back to my physics lesson. And
that's very good of you.
I said, it's about education, so I should finish my school day.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. So thank you for all the members of the audience who have submitted questions. We will get through some of them, maybe not all. I'm glad to say that some of these are from children, which I like. And in fact, this one is from Daisy Sutton, who is age 12. And she asks, if you could ask all the members of the audience to do one thing to make the world a better place, what would it be?
Okay, that's a
Good
very hard
question,
question.
Daisy, wherever you are.
I think it just feels like I have a solution, to give that one solution. To be honest, I do not have a solution, and I may not be able to give an answer that can solve everything. But I would say that there's something that we all can do. We can all play our part, whether that is through helping one individual or through helping and supporting organizations that are out there working for refugees in children's education, or even if it's, buying this book, because when you buy this book, the money goes straight away to the children and the girls that we are supporting in their education, focusing on refugee girls. Every act that you do matters, and I would definitely encourage you all to go and explore and learn more about the stories of the refugee girls and women especially. We need to go beyond statistics and figures, and I hope that we all can play our part, and especially if we find that there is someone in our community or in our school or in our office who is an immigrant or has been displaced that we can help and reach out to and talk to, that would be also amazing.
Do you... if everyone went out and talked to other people about some of these type of stories, do you think it could start to make a difference? Because in the end, there's a real issue here in the UK as well about people welcoming refugees, about the numbers of people we take. How would you change attitudes here?
I think, for me, all I can say is that having a conversation is always a good start. My mom, she could not speak in English in the beginning when we moved here, and she started going to this English learning center, and she found this amazing teacher there, and now they have become friends, and that teacher is white and she only speaks in English, and she does not know our language, she does not know our culture. And my mom is quite a follower of the culture and the religion, and my mom is still learning English, and she does not really understand the British culture, but they both are such good and amazing friends. It's because they talk to each other, they communicate, and they enjoy their time together. They enjoy a cup of tea together, and they are learning nouns and verbs and tenses and everything. So I think these are the things that can actually help an individual, and my mom becomes really happy when she sees her friend. So I think communicating and engaging is a good way, but also you can help in many other ways, from supporting refugees in other countries, supporting Syrian refugees or Rohingyas refugees or refugees in other parts of the world. There are lots of organizations and NGOs out there globally. Some are working on local level, some are working on global level, providing basic facilities to providing education and health facilities, so you can help those as well, and also you can raise awareness and you can spread the message.
Great, thank you. So this is from Jeanette, and we've sort of touched on it. And I should say that my meanness about Birmingham is only really because I'm from Manchester. So Jeanette says, you made Birmingham your home. I grew up there. What's your favourite thing about Birmingham?
The accent.
The accent. Can you do the accent? You don't have to.
No, I can, but I don't want to before doing that, I'm going to say I'm really, really proud of Birmingham, and I respect it deeply, and
Here's to Birmingham.
So, yeah.
Big cheer for Birmingham? All right.
So something like, see you on Sunday, and so the speech that I gave at the UN, Malala Day is not my day, it is the day of every girl and every boy. So I sometimes try to do that speech in a Burmese accent. It's like, Malala Day is not my day, today is the day.
That is a very, very, very good Birmingham accent.
I'm proud of it.
I'm
proud of this accent. Proud of it.
Acting as another career, maybe?
I should consider that after this round of applause that I saw.
Okay, next question's from Isaac, age 9. I love the fact that we have children here. My cousin's also brought her 2 boys, which I think we've got to teach boys to be feminists, don't we?
100%.
Yeah, I agree. I have 3 boys, so I've got Malala to sign a book specially to them to try and make them feminists. So Isaac says, last term, our class learned lots about you during our topic lessons. We were very inspired by your bravery. Who did you study at school who inspired you and why?
I think in my life there has been a few inspirational figures, like from Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela. We would always look up to those figures, but also like in Pakistan, our first female Prime Minister, Benazir Bhutto, she was also an inspiration because of her struggle as a woman in politics and just showing and giving the message to women and girls that they can also be leaders. But also in our Pashtun history, we have Bacha Khan, who is known as the Pashtun Gandhi, but I also learn a lot from the people I meet, and whether it's having a conversation with anyone who you know or do not know, and I think I have learned the most by actually meeting the girls in refugee camps, and their stories and have just stuck in my mind forever. Just seeing that laugh and that smile on their face while they're sharing the story of resilience, it just inspires me.
And do you talked earlier about different senses of humour. I think yours spans the UK, Pakistan. When you've gone around the world, do you find yourself laughing a lot with all these other girls who you've met? Does the sense of humour span across the world?
I think it does, but it's different, everywhere. Yeah, if I say Pakistani jokes, people may not get it, but and it's the same with UK jokes. But I think what I find is like these girls have just so much energy. They're just passionate about their future, and they also are. Maria is interested in like dancing, and when we met her, we were having a conversation with her, but then in the end she said she wanted to show us like a performance, and like we were dancing, like she was dancing, and like we were singing together with her, and so it just brings that human side back to it, that you all deserve to laugh and to dance and to enjoy your time.
Do you love to dance?
I don't think I'm good at it. Yeah.
That wasn't the question. I'll ask the Oxford lot later, should I? Jane Smith, what has been the best thing about being the Nobel Peace Prize winner, and what has been the worst?
Okay. Nobody has ever asked me that question before.
I was going to say, good question.
What's the worst thing about winning the Nobel Peace Prize? I think the best thing would be that year the Nobel Peace Prize was given to 2 activists who were focusing on children. And Kailash Satyarthi, who was the co-recipient, has been fighting for children's freedom and helping children to escape slavery and child labor. And he has saved more than 80,000 children. So winning it together with that amazing and incredible person, and then I was fighting for girls' education and just reminding the world how important it is to invest in girls in their education, and how it is beneficial not just to the girls individually but also to the economies. If we educate all girls, it adds up to $30 trillion to the world economy. It helps us reduce poverty. It helps us to tackle climate change. So just reminding the world that the education of every child is so important. So for me, it just felt like the Nobel Peace Prize was given to children actually in 2014. So that was the good side of it, and it allowed me to highlight it on global stages and global platforms and expand the work that we are doing. But the bad thing, I don't think there is any.
There's no bad thing?
Well, I hope there isn't, because I think it's an honor, and it is a boost to the campaign. Like I feel like if I were on a road walking in this mission to reach the final goal of all girls in school, now like I'm in a car or in a bike, being on the same road, but now the journey is faster and it's quicker, and we are getting there.
And what do you think is the kind of big block towards, what is the kind of block towards girls' education in many parts of the world? What is it that you think drives the attitude that allows societies to say girls shouldn't be educated?
So I think the issues vary across regions. So in some parts of the world, it is the gender stereotypes and the misogyny that is present in society that denies girls as equal to men and boys. And in some parts, it is the fact that girls are forced to get married early, or the school quality is not good, or there is lack of infrastructure, or the distance to go to school is very long and girls cannot afford the travel costs, or they are not getting the facilities or the other things that they need in order to get into school, from uniform to school bag, but then also there is when it comes to the global level, there's a huge lack of investment in girls' education, especially. So right now, currently, there's like $1.8 trillion gap in terms of financing towards education, and that gap needs to be filled. So for that, the donor countries, the recipient countries, all the countries need to play their part. So we hope that the donor countries and the developed countries will give more money towards education, focusing especially on secondary education and girls' education, but also giving a huge focus towards refugee education as well. But also the countries, the developing countries, also need to increase their spending on education, spending in terms of their GDP and their budgets. So this requires a lot of work, from infrastructure to changing social norms and tradition, to pushing governments to increase their finance. And that's something that we are focusing on through Malala Fund, through the advocacy that we do at the G7, G20, the Global Partnership for Education, and other platforms that are out there, in which we are pushing governments to increase their finance. But also there is like national level advocacy that needs to be done, the provincial level advocacy that needs to be done. And for that, it is important that you work together with the local community, with the local activists, and that is something that we have been doing in the countries that we are focusing on.
Do you worry, I mean, a lot of the countries you write about in this book have situations where the refugee camps are long-term places. People have lived there for 10, 15 years. Do you worry about how you can ensure education in situations like that, where people don't have anywhere to move on to?
This has been a big challenge, and oftentimes the donor countries, or like donors in general, would not support on education and would not take it as in terms of like emergency facilities, because they believe that it's an investment in the infrastructure and it's a long-term thing, and maybe that these people might return back to their country, so we do not need to take education that seriously. But I think what is important is that they allow these children to have access to informal education that allows them to catch up on the things that they have missed. So more acceptance towards those projects would be extremely helpful, but also allowing those children to have access to the local schools, so that they can go and get their education in the local schools and integrate into the local communities. That helps both the refugees, but also the people in that country, and brings more acceptance and allows them then to get their education, but also have access to jobs and create more jobs at the same time. Great. But also I think donor countries need to increase their funding towards education.
Great. These are questions from the Mana Mighty Girls group at Mana Primary School. They've got a few here. I'm just going to go through them. So, how does it feel to be an inspiration? Did the girls in your school support you? How did you get to be heard? Actually, let's start with those, and then this next one I'm going to save. It's good.
To be honest, like when I'm, it depends on when you're with your friends, you don't think about yourself as an inspiration, and they would not want me to be their inspiration. But I think in terms of the work that I'm doing, or the whole journey that I have gone through over the last 21 years of my life, I hope that people will learn from that people will get inspired. And for me, like, this idea about this whole inspiration, that you say, oh yeah, you are amazing, or you've done a great job, and I love your story. I think like that's not enough. true inspiration means that you go and you do something. And I hope that people who say that they're inspired from my story or from the story of other girls go out and do something. Yeah.
And what could these are children, these are primary school children. I mean, you were doing this when you were a child, which is amazing. I mean, what kind of things can primary school children do?
I think, you can go out, do some fundraising, some charity work for your local, NGOs that are out there who are supporting the education of children who, do not have access to the facilities that they need. You can also do fundraising for refugee children. You can also go and talk to your parents and talk to your teachers and have a conversation about it. So, each and everything that you do will make an impact. So your action in whichever you choose and whichever you feel comfortable with will have an impact.
And parents presumably take their children and get them involved in the community.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, these two, I'm going to ask you them separately. What was your favourite subject at school?
So when I was in Pakistan, I really liked physics, but then I realized I was not a big science subject fan, and so now then I dropped science subjects, and now I'm doing philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford. So
you know what happens to people who do PPEs?
What happens to them?
Well, they tend to run the country.
Do they?
There's been a few.
Not all of them, though.
Not all of them, yeah. Not everyone who's ever done a PPE.
I feel 100+ students do their PPE. So not all of them go into politics, but some of them do.
You could? You might?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I am not that interested in politics yet. Keeping it political, but right now I'm focused on the work that I'm doing, and I want to continue that, but who knows in the coming 15, 20 years what happens.
I've got one more question from the Mana girls, but seeing as we're on politics, Kausar Tarabi, I hope I've said your name right, what would be the first thing you'd do if you were Prime Minister of Pakistan?
So when I was 11 years old, I did want to become the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and that was when everything was bad in Swat Valley. More than 400 schools were destroyed, girls' education was banned, women were not allowed to go outside of their houses, women were not allowed to go out and do shopping on their own. When I was in that situation, I said, I want to become the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and then on day one, I'll fix everything. There will be, schools will be open, every girl and every boy will be going to school, and everything will be fixed. Now I'm 21, so I've learned a bit that it cannot happen in one day, unfortunately. And so, but if I do become the Prime Minister of Pakistan, I would definitely want to increase spending towards education and health, and actually focus on the needs of people, rather than spending on military or weapons and wars and unnecessary things. It's so important that. But also establishing a system that can bring more stability in the country and having a stronger democracy in the country.
And just in that period you were, sorry. In that period you were talking about, one of your stories that's always struck me was this idea of you watching the television in a cupboard with the volume down because people were having their TV smashed. How was that? I mean, how terrifying was that?
So I often talk about how the Taliban were against education, but they were also against music, they were also against televisions, they were also against any form of color, any form of beauty, any form of celebration and happiness. So they were, if they could hear TV loud from your house, they would get into your house, they would take the TV, they would burn it. They were discouraging people to listen to music. And I do remember, my mom and I and one of our cousins were in a car, and my cousin was driving the car, and there was, just as you have the police stations where the police stops you and you checks your car and everything. So the Taliban also had those stops, and they would stop people and check their cars and make sure the women were covering their face, and people did not have any CD cassettes and were not listening to any music. So my cousin passed on those CD cassettes to to my mom and told my mom to put them in her bag to hide them. And I still remember that, this man like with long beard and like big Kalashnikovs and like guns in their hands stopped our car and said, where are you guys going, and like, do you have any CD cassettes or anything? And my cousin said, no, we don't. And then he said to me, like, why are you not covering your face? And he said, next time cover your face. I was scared. I was very little then, like 9 or something, and I could not say anything. But I was wondering, why is this happening? Like, who's this man telling me to cover my face? And like, so that was the situation there in Swat. So it's so they were against the liberty of people. They were against the freedom of people, things that we take for granted every day. And I think like we are just so grateful that it is not happening anymore in Swat. The Taliban were taken out of Swat Valley. They left Swat Valley, and the military operation was successful, and things are much, much better now. But just thinking that this happened to us at one point in our life is completely, astonishing. I cannot even think back. It just reminds you all of all that time that you have been through. It's good, in our memory we can forget things, so that helps us.
Did you, when you were meeting many of these girls who'd had similar stories, was there a certain relief in discussing shared stories in that way?
I think relief, but also just this sense that you felt that maybe you were the one who it was happening to you, but hopefully that everybody else was okay. And then you realize that this is happening in so many parts of the world, with whether it's either because of the feudal conflicts, or like there are tribes fighting with each other, or there is terrorism, or there is extremism spreading, or there are wars in other forms in countries. That is, the victims of all these things that are happening are the innocent people. It's the innocent people who have to leave their homes, who have to suffer the casualties, who have to suffer the losses in terms of lives. So it does disappoint you that this issue is kind of far spread across the globe, but also a relief to see the courage of girls. Yeah.
So not very many. I just wanted to quickly ask you these. What's your favourite thing about university?
I just love university, and then spending time with my friends, going to lectures, everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Except early lectures, because my friends know I don't go to the early lectures.
Do you make the 9 o'clock lectures?
So my college, Lady Margaret Hall, is quite far away from the lecture hall.
She starts with her excuses.
Yeah. So, and I'm quite short, so like it means like I would take twice as long as anybody else. And
maybe we should get you a bike.
I can't ride a bike.
Oh.
So that means like I have to walk for half an hour every day, and then come back. So it's like takes an hour just in terms of walking. So, and if it's like an early lecture, then
pretty hard.
Yeah. No choice. The last choice is to stay in your room and sleep. But but the lectures are online though. The lectures are online, so we can look at them later. Yeah.
And do you have lots of late nights finishing essays?
Yeah, that's how every night goes.
This is sweet from Amelia Pereira, who's age 10. I hope she didn't hear the chick story. Do you have any pets?
No, and I'm actually scared of animals.
What?
Yeah, I get scared of cats, dogs, and it's just that we have never talked and never interacted with each other. I hope things will be better one day, but right now, our relationships are not that good, and maybe further negotiations in the future can help us. But right now, just like the US president, I have no plan of looking into this.
I'm going to finish with this one. Just whilst we're talking about leaders, we don't need to get too political here, but do you feel sorry for Theresa May? I don't think this audience does, because it's Guardian Live, so just to warn you.
Well, I wish her good luck and the best of luck in everything that she
I like
does.
that. Very diplomatic. Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask you one final question, and I hope you're going to give us a really good answer. I know what I think the answer is. The final one is from the Mana Mighty Girls group. do you think women are just as powerful as men? And if so,
100%
why?
yes. 100% yes, and I think we don't need to answer why, because that's where the issue is. So, yeah.
Do you want to say anything else on that?
No, I think
Shout
we
out
don't,
on
we don't
women's
need to
rights.
answer why. There's no, we don't need an explanation for why women are powerful, because women are powerful and they are strong, and full stop, period.
Malala, you are incredibly inspiring. I'm sure lots of people, I don't know if they will have read it because it's just out. You can buy them outside. I can honestly tell you, I have just been so inspired by this book. All the stories are absolutely incredible. It really makes you think about your own life and how lucky we are, and think about some of the terrible things happening around the world, but it also has a very, very positive feel. You have had a very, very full-on day, and you've got to rush back to university, so unfortunately we'll not be able to sign books. So what I would like you to do is please stay in your seats whilst Malala leaves the stage, but can you give her a huge round of applause?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.